season in the NFL. It's been a rough go since his last run with the Packers in 22. Of course, tore his Achilles in game 1 of 23, and the Jets were, pretty bad in 2024. But over the weekend, Aaron Rodgers passed his physical and then signed a one-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, $10 million guaranteed, a chance to reach 19.5 if he hits all of his incentives. Elsewhere, four-time Pro Bowl running back Nick Chubb expected to sign with the Houston Texans after passing a physical there. The Texans have been looking to pair someone with Joe Mixon, who rushed for over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns last season. They just didn't get much production from the position outside of that. Enter the longtime Cleveland Browns running back Chubb. And the Green Bay Packers expected to part ways with Jair Alexander, informing the veteran cornerback Monday of their intent to release him. The two-time All-Pro was the highest-paid cornerback in the league when he signed a 4-year extension just 2 years ago, but injuries and other things have limited him to about half the team's games since the start of the 2021 season. All right, NFL free agency with the vets really starting to pick up now. We say hello to CBS Sports NFL writer Ryan Wilson. Ryan, great to see you as always. Free agency can be great, and it can also be nerve-wracking. It can be a lot of things depending on the player and the teams involved. Jair Alexander, high-end talent, spotty availability in recent years due to injuries. Where could you see him landing?
Hey, Russ, good to see you. And you're exactly right about the spotty availability. The last 2 years, he played in 7 games, only each of those 2 seasons, 23-24. But that doesn't mean there will not be a market for him, and perhaps a favorite landing spot might be the Miami Dolphins, because we certainly have the impression that Jalen Ramsey will not be long for Miami and South Beach. Maybe he gets reunited with the Rams in L.A. We'll find out together. But without a starting cornerback, Jair Alexander would certainly make a ton of sense down in South Florida. They have Kader Kohu, who's been really good, primarily out of the slot. And then after that, if Jalen Ramsey leaves, you're talking about Cam Smith, the former second-round pick, who's been on and off in terms of consistency, and then Jason Marshall Jr., who they just drafted. I don't know if you want to put him into a starting role. So I like the idea of Jair making his way to Miami.
All right, now you got Asante Samuel Jr., another guy, limited to 4 games in 24, thanks to offseason shoulder and neck surgery. What's the market look like for the former Chargers corner?
And again, the injuries have been the concern. That's why he's still available, because when he's healthy, he's really good. Obviously, his dad was a fantastic player in the early aughts with the New England Patriots when he won those Super Bowls. But I think the 49ers make a ton of sense. Robert Saleh's back as defensive coordinator there. The zone scheme fits what Asante Samuel does well. He can play in the slot. He can play outside if you need him to, but I think the slot would be where you would want to target him. They have Diamador Lenore, who's been really good. They just re-upped his deal. Ronaldo Green, the rookie last year, is going to have a chance to start this year after a strong season, and they drafted Upton Stout, so that's an opportunity for him to play as well. But I think if you're looking for depth, and if he can stay healthy, there's an opportunity for him to have a big season based on what we saw early in his career when he was, in fact, able to stay on the field in L.A.
Now, we got a thread running through this whole segment. It's high-end talents, injury concerns. Running back J.K. Dobbins, another one. Met with the Broncos recently, left without a deal. Who else could be in the market for another former Charger here?
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys come to mind immediately, but I will give the Fighting Jerry Joneses some credit. They signed Javonte Williams in free agency. They got Miles Sanders, and they drafted Jaden Blue. So the room is a little deeper than it was 12 months ago at this time. But I still think there's room for improvement. And J.K. Dobbins proved last year that if he's healthy, he can still contribute at a pretty high level. But as you know, Russ, it's all about keeping these guys healthy. And, we talk about running backs being a fungible position. On some level, maybe that's true. But I think J.K. Dobbins, if he can stay on the field, gives you the player that we saw glimpses of last year, and certainly the high-end talent we saw in Baltimore before he got hurt.
All right, let's keep this rolling with former Chargers, I guess. Keenan Allen, 60 or more catches in 8 straight seasons. His time Chicago is up. Who could use this 33-year-old pass catcher?
You can never go home again unless you go home again, Russ. What about the Chargers, the team that drafted him out of Cal, the former second-round pick? And look, Quentin Johnston has gotten a little incrementally better each and every year as a former first-round pick. Last year, Ladd McConkey, the second-round pick, went absolutely crazy, and I think he's going to continue to grow into that role. And they have Mike Williams, their former first-round pick. They brought him back into town. You can't go home again, too, if you're Mike W. And I think Keenan Allen provides so much consistency in the middle of the field in terms of patrolling the in-between the hashes, if you will. At this point, he's not going to win any foot races, but I think he gives you that security blanket if you're Justin Herbert, who obviously has some familiarity with the former L.A. Charger.
Let's stick with another receiver. 9 full seasons, Amari Cooper has reached 1,000 receiving yards 7 times. Played with the Bills and Browns last season. Where does it look like he's going to end up in 2025?
Yeah, Russ, it's somewhat surprising that he's still available. But again, there's been no urgency and movement towards some of these players. Amari's one of them. But I think the Cardinals make a lot of sense. They have Marvin Harrison Jr., who was actually really good last year. When we look back, his numbers were perhaps better than we thought they were in real time. They do have Michael Wilson on the roster and Zay Jones, and those are going to be the three primary starters. But there is room in that wide receiver room for more talent. And certainly someone like Amari Cooper, who's such a fantastic route runner, even if he's not as fast as he once was, doesn't make a lot of noise, does what he's asked to do, and is consistently finding ways to get open, at least prior to last season. But I think he has a chance to recapture some of that on a team like Arizona, where he won't have to be the first or even the second fiddle in that offense with Kyler Murray.
All right, Ryan, throwing a lot at you here. I got one more. 36-year-old Von Miller. He wants to play in 2025. The Bills released him to create some cap space, and they're also pretty stocked there on the edge. Where's a viable landing spot for a guy like Von Miller?
So I wrote down two things in terms of a viable landing spot. A team with Super Bowl aspirations and a team that needs a designated pass rusher. And that brings me to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I don't know if there's a better landing spot for any free agent on planet Earth than the Philadelphia Eagles, because they are not lacking at many positions, and they have a lot of young talent at the edge rush position. We know about Nolan Smith Jr. We know about Jalen Hunt, the former third-round pick, who was flash at times. They have Azeez Ojulari, who they signed. He's struggled with injuries. And Josh Uche is one of the other veteran edge rushers. But there's room for Von Miller in that room, because we know Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, likes to get home with rushing four and letting the other guys play on the back end. And I think Von Miller still has some juice if you need him for 15 or 20 snaps a game just to get after the quarterback on third down. And he can win one-on-one matchups even at his quote-unquote advanced age.
A lot of veteran talent out there for the taking on the free agent market. Ryan Wilson, thanks so much.
They're coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons in which they made the playoffs each time. But this 2025 squad will look a little different than the one that lost in the divisional round to the Eagles. Remember, they actually had a shot to win late in Philly in that single-digit loss. GM Les Snead on his favorite trade ever while joining the With the First Pick podcast crew. Remember, LA didn't even have a first-round pick for a good while during his tenure.
The first one, and that would be when we had the 2 pick in St. Louis. And we dropped back. I call it the RG3 trade. Washington moved up to take RG3. Then we continue to trade back. But to be a rookie GM and be a part of pulling that off, that just show you, Ryan and Rand, that there is actually a lot of luck in this, because I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah, he's reinforcing the trade that the Washington then Redskins moved up, and they got, 3 first-round picks, set them up pretty well before he kind of went on that other run where he didn't have a first-round pick. We welcome back Lige Douzable to talk about the Rams here. And when we get to L.A., what's the expectation for this team, given that they brought back Matthew Stafford and they're trying to make yet another run of the postseason?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's to win the division and make a run in the playoffs. And to your point, you alluded to it perfectly, Tommy. They were 2 Jalen Carter pressures away from essentially beating the Philadelphia Eagles and getting to the NFC Championship game. People were wondering, would Matt Stafford retire? There was also trade talks. It seemed like he was most likely about to be traded to another team. They ultimately get him back, restructure his contract, and he proved versus the Philadelphia Eagles in inclement weather that he still has one of the biggest arms in football. So when you look at this team, the expectations are to win the division and make some noise throughout the playoffs.
No Cooper Kupp, but Davante Adams comes in to be a 1-2 punch with Puka Nacua. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, Davante Adams, even in his 30s, still proved last year with the New York Jets that he can still separate and get open and be a big-time player. Still went over 1,000 yards when you add the yardage between the Raiders and the Jets last year. And I think they actually get an upgrade in regards to bringing Davante Adams and letting Cooper Kupp go. Now, it is hard to say that because it seemed like Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp were always in sync. The no-look passes from the 2021 season when they went on to win that Super Bowl, like they build up that rapport, and that'll be the question mark. How quickly can Davante Adams and Matt Stafford, and you see the accolades right there for Matt Stafford in that Super Bowl year with the Rams. You see him in December, January, February. That's when he plays his best football. But can he get that continuity that he had with Cooper Kupp, with Davante Adams? If he's able to do that, that would be one of the best 1-2 punches in football with Puka Nacua and also Davante Adams.
Let's get to the other side of the ball. The defensive line is got a lot of talent, and they're all young. But you and I were just talking off air that there's a kind of an under-the-radar move that might solidify this position group.
Yeah, they brought in the wily vet Poona Ford from the LA Chargers, so he didn't even have to go that far in the same stadium, right? Tommy, this is the guy that's going to help solidify them in the run defense because they struggled at times when you look at that. They're kind of undersized when you look at them up front with Kobe Turner and also Braden Fisk. Now they added Poona Ford to be that nose tackle that can hold on to those double teams, which will free up Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner. We didn't even mention the two outside linebackers and Jared Verse, who all he did his rookie year was become a Pro Bowl player and essentially took on like the Reggie Miller role versus the Knicks when he went to the Philadelphia Eagles and said he was going to have a good game and went out and balled versus the Philadelphia Eagles. You see it right there. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year, was a Pro Bowler. Saw Aaron Donald do that as well his rookie year with the Rams. You see the most pressures by a rookie last season. Two of their draft picks right there, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. This defense will be led by this young defensive line. And to your point, Tommy, all these guys are like 3 years and under, except for Poona Ford, who adds some veteran presence to that defensive line.
You mentioned the room for improvement, ranked 23rd in the NFL in run defense. So again, that's the bottom three of the league. What would you say to a potential reunion of Jalen Ramsey and the Rams? Would you be a fan, or would it be a fit?
It would definitely be a fit, Tommy, and that's my biggest concern when you look at this Rams team, more specifically the cornerback position. Darius Williams and Akello Witherspoon come back. Both of these guys have been savvy veterans, but they have had games where they haven't been consistent. We saw the Rams make a big trade for Jalen Ramsey when he came to the LA Rams, and they went on to win a Super Bowl, and then they traded him to the Miami Dolphins. Well, it seems like Miami is looking to trade him. Why not go back to an old team that you're comfortable with, a team that you want a Super Bowl with, a team where you were a perennial Pro Bowl with? So to me, it makes a lot of sense for Jalen Ramsey to go there. He's comfortable with Sean McVay. They're open to potentially trading for him. I think this could be a win-win, not only for Miami, but also the Rams as well, because as I alluded to, that's my biggest concern, more specifically at their cornerback position in the secondary. I think they need to get better there if they want to make a run to a Super Bowl.
All right, before I let you go here, I got to get your prediction on this team, which, by the way, is the second betting favorite behind the San Francisco 49ers. So, Deuce, do you think they get to at least 10 wins for the third straight year?
I do believe it'll be a trifecta. I do have them going 10-7. I think this will be one of the most competitive divisions in all of football. I know people will talk about the NFC North, but this NFC West, when you look at how the Cardinals are trending in the right direction out there with Jonathan Gannon, you talked about the San Francisco 49ers. If everybody's healthy, they're still going to be a dangerous team, and the odd makers did them favors by giving them the easiest strength they schedule when you talk about teams that made the playoffs last year. And you talk about the Rams. All Sean McVay does is get to the playoffs. He has a savvy veteran quarterback who plays at a high level in Matthew Stafford. They have a young defensive line that we alluded to earlier that can get after the passer. I think weeks 14 through 17 will tell the story that at Cardinals versus Lions, that little run right there on the schedule, that can determine whether they win the division or they end up being 10-7 and being a wild card team like they were last year.
Yeah, taking a look at that, you have them splitting against the Niners and the Cardinals, but you have them season sweeping the Seahawks.